Testing. Hello. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, if you're not here, raise your hand. One in every crowd over there. It's so wonderful to see a lot of you. Many of you I know. Some of you I've never met before. So let me introduce myself. My name is Mal Montoya, and I'm the president and CEO of the Milwaukee Artists Resource Network. Welcome to our Art and Culture Hub. It's such an honor to have each and every one of you here. So tonight's a very special night, but before we do get started, hopefully there'll be an opportunity to get a nice glass of wine or a cup of coffee from the bar as well, and make sure to thank the staff there. And I want to thank our team, our internal team, led by Casey over there, who's doing one heck of a job behind all that audio video equipment. So thank you very much, Casey. Couldn't have been done without you. Yes, let's hear a hand for him. So before we get into Public Art 101, I wanted to just give everybody a little bit of a background on who we are. We are a nonprofit, a 501c3, focused on expanding opportunities primarily for artists, both developed artists and developing artists. This facility here at its core is about opportunity. We have a beautiful show, for example, that today is the first day that it's actually up, and we're going to have a reception here on September 9th. And that show is called Reflecting My Muslim Americanism. And it's just a very, not only compelling show, but a very brave show, and I'm just so happy that our team was able to put it all together. So again, thank you to Riley Niemock, our gallery director, for curating this show. So let's hear it for Riley. So before I introduce John, real quickly, this organization is a 20-year-old organization. We've been centered right here in Milwaukee for many years. Our new Art and Culture Hub is relatively new. We've only been really here for the last year or so. We built it during a wonderful pandemic that I'm afraid to say we're still kind of touching it every now and then, so I hope everybody has gone through and protected yourself the best you can, because we do a lot of events here. We not only have gallery exhibits, we have a wonderful marketplace, and that marketplace is made up of our membership-driven organization that gives us ideas, that gives us the ability to present their work on some level, which is kind of in line with what we're going to do here tonight. So again, I thank each and every one of you. If you have questions regarding membership, even though we are a public house, everybody here is welcome. The membership drives us, and it drives what we do on so many levels. So if you're interested in joining us or finding out more about us as an organization, I invite you to do so. We have brochures up at the very front as well. So what I'm going to do is move away and turn the microphone over to John Grant, who's going to give you some wonderful information along with Becky. They're a great team that is here to serve you on an amazing project, and I hope that you take advantage of this great evening that they've put together. So again, thank each and every one of you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm sometimes a little taller than these mics, so hopefully they can, I know I'm not good at holding mics, so I have to apologize. Feel free to yell at me if you can't hear me. If I wander away from this mic, please encourage me to get back to the mic. I'm usually speaking with my hands and walking around, so this is a curious thing for me. Thank you very, very much for allowing us to have this at this great organization. Mal and his team have just been really fantastic to work with. And when we look for a place to have a conversation and a discussion, this place seemed to be the right place to us. We're from Denver. We have a local partner, Lois Bielefeld, who's in the back. Can you wave? And if you don't know Lois, you're hanging out in the wrong places. And if you want to meet her, she's everywhere. So she's actually involved here at MARN, and she runs a program here, and she's been a great local liaison for us to help us understand a little bit about the artist community here, about the history of art. She's deeply involved in so many things that are here. Every time she takes us to a show, Like today at the warehouse, we're blown away by what's going on here in Milwaukee. So we're pleased to have her as our partner. Becky Waring-Steele is my associate. We have a company called Public Art Services. We're based out of Denver, but we work in all 50 states and in Canada. We also work in Canada. So we are, even though we are based in Denver, we have our roots all over the country, and we have been working to establish arts programs, to help select artists from around the country, and to stretch it. Did you stretch it? Did you bring your stretcher? What was I saying? To establish our programs, and to create destination locations for art, whether that's the individual work of art or the place, a neighborhood being known for its art, a community being known for offering opportunities to its artists. Those are things that we're involved in. Those are things that interest us, and they're programs that we help communities put together. Just a little teeny background on me, and then a little bit on how Becky and I started to work together. And it's the short list. I wanted to be an artist. I went to art school for 7 years. I graduated from Pratt Institute in New York. I knew I was not going to be the artist that made it in the studio. I knew that when I was at art school. When I graduated, I knew I wanted to stay involved in the arts and be a creative individual. So I went into the business of art, opened an art gallery, which I ran for a number of years, and then I was hired to run Denver's public art program. And I did that for 10 years, and we had a very, very active time. We finished 147 finished projects in 10 years while I was there. And after that, I went to become the deputy director of the Contemporary Art Museum in Denver, where I met Becky. Becky ran our volunteer services program, and she took us from like 6 desperate individuals to like 200 volunteers in less than a year. So she is a very accomplished woman on her own right, and a wonderful artist. We have another individual that works for us, Trey, who he will be involved in this project too. He's a working artist in Denver, also a curator. He knows objects, he knows fabrication, he knows details and materials. The things that we use to make art, he's very familiar with, whether that's in a 2-dimensional way or a 3-dimensional way that gets big, technology, mechanisms, mechanical stuff. So that's the team that we're bringing to this project, and our job is to come in and help put together this request for qualifications, go through that process, which we're going to talk about tonight, and then work with the selected artists through their installations at the new expansion of the convention center here in Milwaukee. So you can see how we needed somebody like Lois to help us make these connections and reach out to organizations that support artists, introduce us to places like MARN and Mal and their staff, so that we could start a conversation, right? Because we can do this anywhere, but we can't do it without the people in this group and people like Lois to support us. So that's just a little bit of background on this. Tonight, we're going to talk about what it's like to get into one of these processes, right? Public art is work for hire. It's very, very different than work that you might do in your heart, in your studio, what goes on in your brain, what comes out of the tip of your pen, your paintbrush, what you build in your studio with the tools and materials that are there. All of those things are part of public art, but at its core, it is a commission. It is work for hire. It's something that we are saying, yes, let's collaborate together. Whether that's with me and Becky, or whether it's a group of architects that are involved in creating a space, or landscape architects, community planners. In this case, it's going to be architects and the people that run and program the convention center. And that convention center has a very, very specific job that it does, which is to generate revenue and encourage people to come to this city and spend their money and vacation and eat in restaurants and buy things in our stores, hopefully buy art when they're here. I've done it on convention trips myself, so it's not unheard of. But their job is to generate revenue for the city and to create a little stir and some activity. The American Legion is in town. I have a feeling everybody here has seen American Legionnaires out there with their hats and their emblems on. They're at the convention center. They're unloading an enormous amount of money into this economy while they're here from a myriad of reasons, and we all know how that works. So this talk is about you guys applying for these opportunities, understanding what will be expected, and I'm going to start off with a little bit about public art because I live and breathe it. A lot of people don't, right? So it's it's a little primer. So once again, this is for the Wisconsin Center. Hopefully some of you guys have either read an article or seen something on the news about this expansion. It's a pretty major piece of construction. The old building is exhausted in its design. It was obviously a very 1980s building. This new building is a refresh, a contemporary look. Becky said something that I thought was very funny is the old one kind of reminds her of a mall that she went to in the 80s. So it has that vernacular, right? Modest architecture tends to age quickly. The old convention center was modest architecture and it aged pretty quickly. So the new piece will be an update. I worked on the Denver Convention Center a number of years ago. It's now about to expand again. But our convention center went from 3 square blocks to 9 square blocks in one construction event. It became one of the largest convention centers in the country. New Orleans, I think, is bigger. Atlanta might be bigger, but there's just a few of them bigger than Denver's. And we did an entire program in that convention center. And the idea behind that convention center arts program was to encourage people to leave the convention center, right? Because if anyone has been to a convention, and God help you if you've been because they're horrible, and you come to that convention center from somewhere else, you know some things. You know their airport, you know the hotel, you know the convention center, you know the hotel, the convention center, the hotel, the airport. And there's your 3 days at a convention. Rarely, other than maybe a restaurant that's close by, do you venture out into the community to start to experience the place where you have landed, right? So our idea for that convention center was to create artwork or hire artists, work with artists, to create a body of work that talked about things that were outside the building. And in Colorado, our natural environment, our parks, those are a big part of why you're there. This lake, these rivers, these communities, the fact that you still have great architecture that hasn't been totally destroyed in this city yet, there's a lot of good reasons to get out and meet people and go into communities and eat food from ethnic groups that is more delicious than in the place you live in. So the same thing is true here is, what is this place? Who are these people? What is their history? What do they do here? What's great about this place? What's beautiful about this place? What's good about these communities? You know, there's a lot of time in the world to talk about the difficulties in our life. Art is a big part of that. That's where we do that. Art is also where we talk about community and togetherness and things like that. So there's ways to talk about a place in every category, right? And those are all important. They need to be in our poetry, in our songs, in the paintings that we paint, in the sculptures, and the way we express ourselves, the way we treat each other on the street, the way our communication and our transportation works. All those things are about expressing ourselves in community. So what we're going to be doing is trying to figure out what that's going to be for this group of art. We have a selection panel that has been put together. It's a diverse group of people that have a little bit of arts background, a little bit of civics background, a little bit of business background, because the convention center is about business. So we have kind of this diverse group that's going to look at this project and help lead the way and identify artists that are good at painting that picture, of making that object, of telling that story, of writing that poem, of singing that song, of being that person that is about this place, Milwaukee. We have, to a certain extent, encouraged regional and local artists in this process. We have not taken national or even international artists off the table, but we are leaning towards trying to identify as many regional and local artists as we can. That's why we're doing this here today, is to have that conversation, encourage this group, and try to bring people in and dispel some of the scary things, but also point out the responsibilities and the things that make this different than your gallery or your art fair or the tent you put up at a farmer's market or whatever way you sell your work, your wares, or the export of your creative person, right? So this is the short version, but we're going to go all the way back, right? So art in public places, public art, we have always done it. We've done it since the caves, right? We as human beings have decided someone is going to be the one that tells the story. Someone will be our mark maker, right? Someone will sing our songs and write our poetry. Someone will mark on the walls of the cave to remind us what it is to be human, or to mark the seasons, or to remember what it is that we worship. There's a lot of these things that we've done forever and ever. The things that enthuse the human spirit are almost always expressed by artists somehow, right? And we find them, of course, in our places of worship. Those have been some of the most important ways where artists were always involved in architecture. Mark making, right? Text. It's not always figurative. Often it is about the word, it's about the symbol, right? In certain Western religions, it's quite literal. Eastern religions, very different. We have this history. You cannot go anywhere in the world and find a culture of people that have not been mark-making on their bodies, on their pots, on the things that they use, even on their tools, or the songs that they lead. So we have a deep, deep history of making sure that artists were part of architecture. It was an important thing that when we built a space for ourselves, not just our home, but our place that represented the larger group, that we invited artists in as a vital, vital idea, right? It was important that they came to tell our story. Then something happened, and this is my opinion, and if anyone wants to argue this with me, I'm willing to talk to you about it after this. But modernist architecture came onto the scene, right? Modernism, the thing itself, the reduction to, right, the removal of, the breaking down to the elements that make, right, this idea of simply drawing these lines and not decorating or fenestrating happened. And it was very, very popular for two reasons. One, it was wonderful, and two, it was really affordable. Building in the modernist style was enormously affordable when compared to traditional styles that we just looked at, right? For mass space, the amount of volume you could get for a little bit of money was amazing. And the ability of architects to take that concept and refine it and still make something quite important and quite beautiful is fantastic. But what happened is that art ended up out in the plaza. It was the thing that was brought in later and placed beside the architecture. Not within, not on, not part of. It was not part of the discussion unless there was a Bertoia or a Henry Moore and the architect knew that they wanted that thing, not on it, don't bring it in it, but next to it. So we started to see artists left out of the architectural process and put out in the plaza, and that's where plop art came from, right? This idea that we're just going to plop it out there. We'll just put it out there, right? It doesn't matter what it is, we'll just put it over there. My husband bought it, we'll just put it out there, right? This art's the corporate office, the building's boring, we need something for the plaza, just put something out there, right? And this was how this happened in my 35 years of thinking about it, which may be totally wrong. We can discuss that later. So great sculptures, great artists, but not necessarily part of the place, right? These sculptures, while great, didn't really have anything to do with the building. or the people that were coming to the building, or why they were coming to the building, or the mission of the building, or what the education that happened in that building, or the science that went on there, or even, for God's sakes, the financial documents that were poured over by accountants there, right? Still an important thing. Does the art in the plaza have anything to do with that? Probably not, right? So public art, or art in public places, which are two different things. I separate art in public places, which this is, right? This is art in a public place. Public art is a process and a funding stream and a reason and a dialogue in a community of people that come together to say, yes, let's do this. Let's find our poet laureate and have them have a say, right, in our decision making. I believe that's a big difference. One just shows up one day because Herb bought it. The other one is these people said yes, right? The other thing that's important about public art is that a group of people said, let's do this. Let's take our tax dollars, let's take the money that we generate together, and let's hire artists to be part of the conversation. That's a pretty big thing, right? When public art first started as a requirement, as a process, as a rule, which was 1968 in Philadelphia, the very first time it became an ordinance. So here's more plop. Great artworks, right? Philadelphia happened. So in 1968, Philadelphia actually passed an ordinance that required that 1% of the construction budget of any city project needed to be set aside to hire an artist, to bring that artist in to create work specifically for that location, for the people, for the mission of that building, right? And it set the standard. So 1968, slowly, one other program here, another program there. This did not explode into public programs all over the country, but it started this process of thinking, and one by one, cities started to get on because they started to realize that this was how you attracted people to a city, was to have a cultural life, right? If I'm going to move my business to Milwaukee, I'm going to make sure that there's a museum, I'm going to make sure there's a symphony, I'm going to make sure there's an opera, I'm going to make sure there's a zoo for my kids, I'm going to make sure the schools are good. We're going to, you know, before I bring 60 people or 250 people and relocate to a town, that town has to have something for the husbands and the wives and the children and the partners and the carriers on to enjoy with me. Because if I'm moving everybody, there better be something for everybody, or I'm going to be in trouble when we get there, right? Hey, we're going to Lincoln, Nebraska. And there you are in Lincoln, Nebraska, and you don't even like gravy on everything. So you're going to be upset. You need to have this robust community so people realize that these arts programs, which made arts a daily experience in the street, happen, right? I'm in the arts business. I go to the museum maybe twice a month on a good month because I'm busy. But I pass by public art in Denver every day, sometimes 2 or 3 things. And I don't go very many places. I go to my office, I go to my home, but I pass by public art. So I have a daily experience with public art, right? So that's what Philadelphia started. And now there's probably over 400 cities in the country that have a requirement, a law, part of their taxing that requires at least some version of this, 0.5%, 1%. Some have 2%, some are very robust. I think Fort Worth just went to 2%. That's actually a lot of money when you really think about it over the life of a city. So Philadelphia model. One of the other great things that Philadelphia started was these monumental mural projects, right? Murals have always been around, started in the caves, but they put a program together. It's the very first time in the country that a mural program, and it was because they had derelict buildings, and they had buildings where you had 2 beautiful buildings right next to each other. One would get ripped down, so you'd have the 3 facades of an old beautiful building and this wall. And Philadelphia was filled with that. And they were difficult to plan around and try to revitalize the city. So what do? They hired great artists to do murals on them. And it was also a way to combat the tagging and graffiti that was not necessarily what they believed was a progressive way to do murals. Now, that was their decision making, not mine. I think the net outcome was pretty good. So they have continued this program on for about 25 years, and they are monumental and fantastic and super famous. Isn't this the artist that did Michelle Obama's? So phenomenal work. So this is very, very different. Our little company, we don't do a lot of murals, but when we do murals in a different way than a lot of cities do. We look for artists that don't do murals, and we figure out how to help them make them big, right? So we take gallery quality artists, people maybe that do things this big, and we help them make them 60 feet tall, right? So we're changing the way murals look in Denver one at a time. We still have a lot of traditional aerosol murals that, it's great programs. But we do ours just a little bit different. It's kind of modeled on Philadelphia because of the quality of the work that they bring, and we pay more. We believe artists should be paid. We believe that artists are asked first and give the most across the board. I don't agree with that. I believe that we should be offered the most opportunities and perform at our highest level, right? We should be paid for what we do. These are important ways that culture is built. This is how we tell our story. So artists need to be paid. Our business is about paying artists for the work that they do, and paying them not at pat you on the head rates, but sit at the big table rates, right? Architects get paid, engineers get paid, illustrators get paid, graphic artists get paid, fine artists have got to be paid at the same level. Artists are their own worst enemy, unfortunately, in this game, because we tend to work cheaply, because we do the work anyways, right? You don't pay me, I'm still going to my studio and I'm still going to make art. I'm not going to stop making art because nobody's paying me. These programs help take that effort, take that idea, and put it up here. You're not at the kids' table anymore. And especially in a public art program, you're definitely not at the kids' table anymore. So public art obviously can be anything, right? Nobody makes a decision as to what public art is, and no one makes the decision about how you make it or what it's made out of. Now, there are certain things that probably have a hard time existing in public spaces. Crochet comes to mind. But is that true? We have a great group called Ladies Fancy Work Society in Denver, and they do monumental crochet projects that exist outside. Most are temporary to a certain extent, but they do exist. And now they're starting to do, well, they did a big Meow Wolf installation, and they're doing interior pieces that are permanent. But they started as a guerrilla group. I mean, they were a badass guerrilla group to start with, and now they've evolved, and they're making a nice living doing these projects now. So you say, well, crochet. Well, Ladies Fancy Work Society. There you go. There's crochet in a public space, right? But normally, the idea of public art is that it's permanent. And one of the things that generates why it's permanent is that the funding streams are one time only, right? Public art is almost never generated from a yearly budget cycle where they go, hey, here's your public art money. And next year you get the same amount. It is because that building got built, that bridge was built, that rec center, that library, that new pool, that new intersection happened. So by law, those dollars had to be set aside. That's going to happen once, and in another 40 years, they'll rip it down and do it again. So that's a one-time opportunity. So the idea is that we want that asset to exist over time, right? So rarely will temporary works or experiential works be funded with public art dollars. They're almost always funded with those few programmatic dollars which are ongoing, where the arts office might have a small budget for programming or experience-based art or big light exhibitions or dance or music or performance, all of the other wonderful things that make a city great, almost never paid by public art dollars, right? So this is Matthew Mazzata. He's an artist that we work with. This is fiberglass. It's wood. It's a couple chairs. And it's a rain cycler. So the top of this collects water, and then it actually rains, this cloud rains down upon the house. So it saves water, and then it rains on the house. So you sit in here while the cloud is raining so you listen to the sound on the metal roof. Experience peace, but certainly a substantial structure. This is a project that I worked on. This is fiberglass. That's an actual taxi. That's not a fake taxi. So we're using a taxi for art making, right? That's art making. That's a material that we can use, the thing itself, right? Found object work. This is a big found object, but it's still just found object work. Obviously, everybody's familiar with this. High polished stainless steel, super hard to own, really beautiful and successful. Did it create a destination location? Absolutely. This is carved stone, Carrara stone by the great public artist Larry Kirkland. Catherine Widgery, this is dichroic glass, which is often overused, but in instances like this, it's a nice little accent. But this is Akoya wood, stainless steel, and dichroic glass. Traditional tile making, the great Nick Cave, of course, superhero Nick Cave. And a new form of tile work. So this is a photographic print. It's a ceramic photographic print on ceramic tile. And this is a way where, once again, go to a painter. This woman has never done a mural before. She's never done a tile mural before. She's never done a monumental piece before. And when we said, we're going to have you do this giant ceramic mural, she passed out. And then when she found out how much we were going to pay her, she really passed out. But this is actually printed. A word, did we have? We didn't have that one of the, so this is, so she did a painting and just delivered it to us. She gave us a scan of it, and we did the work. We had this created, and she's over the moon about it, right? This is 30 feet tall, 28 feet tall. And it will be there for as long as ceramics last outside, and it's high fire, so it will be there for a heck of a long time. This building will not last as long as that mural, if I know modern construction. Here's another instance where this is a painter that actually was next door to us. No, he was upstairs from us at our old studio. Same thing. Do you want to do it? And he just went, I can't do that. So I have worked with a mural painter, a great mural painter for years, who's in his 70s now. He started in the 70s in New York City painting monumental work. He's a good painter, but he knows how to do a great copy. So this looks exactly like the painting, which was, I don't know, maybe 3.5 feet tall. And we scanned it, and he enlarged it on the wall. You can see the swing stage up at the top. So this is 60 feet. Maybe is it 60 feet this way? I can't remember. 60 feet this way. So it's like 60 by almost 80 feet. It's a huge, huge mural. And it looks exactly like the painting that he did. Daisy Patton, a favorite of both of ours, a great painter. This is an instance where this is a parking garage. And parking garages are horrible looking. And they design them that way because they're cheap. And then they are desperate for an artist to fix the problem, right? And artists are always asked to come fix the problem. So in this instance, because there's an apartment complex on this side, they have to have this stretch material in these two locations because the ramps, they come up like this, and the headlights shine into everybody's apartment. So they had these here, and they said, well, we want to do something. Help us. But we have to have this stuff here. So we figured out how to print full color on these materials. So she did the painting. We segmented it out. She segmented it out for us. He painted the walls, and then we had these printed, and they worked together to create a single work. So this is a Structure Flex, and it's a company out of Texas. They do this printing. They usually do advertisements, Bic razors and, tequila, Tito's tequila and stuff like that. So we just had them to use that same technology to create artwork, right? So combining two different ideas. This is a great landscape piece. This is just steel and wood. It's creating a place in a plaza, creating a destination location. This is a computer controller, lights, and stainless steel in this experience here in West Florida. These are polymers and painted steel, this upside down piece, which is just flabbergasting and fantastic. This is a piece I worked on. This is actually corian material, which is a countertop material that we use. So these, those children's blocks are actually made out of corian material that's fused together, and then it's grouted in and infilled with the colors so it'll last forever. And then aluminum, the aluminum of the top spins around, and then all these boxes are made out of little things, little games that kids play. So that's corian again, but the found object, the thing itself, little mirrors, word games, and then the terrazzo floor was also designed. This is a piece at the School for the Deaf and Blind in Colorado, and this is a stainless steel piece. This piece is on springs, so even if you are deaf and blind, the motion becomes your experience with this thing, kind of playing with this. And it's not a up and down, it's not a back and forth, it's a motion like you're normally not experiencing. So this is an artist going, how do I solve for what I can't show or communicate with, through hearing or eyes? How can I do it? And it's not just things that they touch, but it's the full body experience. Matthew Geller is a great artist. This is aluminum and stainless steel in the plaza where they finally pulled down Frank Rizzo's sculpture in Philadelphia. And this one is, I don't know who this artist is. Oh, it's Becky. Do you want to talk a little bit about this, Becky?
Oh, there I am. That was surprising. So as John mentioned earlier, I am also an artist. And, I'm sure like a lot of you in this room, how many of you here have completed a public art project? Oh my gosh, amazing. Wonderful, wonderful. I will soon be joining your ranks once I complete this project. Like many artists, it can feel a little bit like a catch-22 when you go to start applying to these public art RFQs. Many of them will say that you've had to have completed a public artwork before. I was very fortunate in 2018 to be a finalist for a project in Colorado that was specifically for artists who had never worked in public art before. It was a wonderful experience. In the end, I was not selected as the artist, but it really jump-started me in wanting to pursue this more, and especially working with John and learning so much more about the field. So I started looking into other ways to really pursue this vision for myself. And I was very fortunate throughout 2020 to apply to a lot of different grants. And I received quite a few, because once you receive one grant and you apply to the next one and say, I already have funding from this organization, it somehow becomes easier for people to open up their wallets and give you more money for a project. So this is a peek at a basically self-funded, since I worked to get all the grant funding, of a project that I'm working on for the Westwood neighborhood in Denver, which is a primarily Latinx community. About 50% of the population is under the age of 18. So this is a project where I worked in partnership with students at Monroe Elementary School. And John, if you'd go to the next slide. My clicker's not working. Thank you. So the first example was a cardboard maquette that I built in my studio. I traditionally work in small scale sculpture, so anywhere between 1/160th scale and 1/12th scale, not very large. So this was a really wonderful way for me to be able to partner with a fabricator in town. So I'm partnering with a local fabricator who was able to turn my cardboard maquette into these stainless steel sculptures. So this is a behind the scenes peek. But basically working with the students to create these scenes that celebrate their community. And that was the whole prompt for the project, was what does community mean for you? This also fills, a lot of public art is also serving many other purposes. And one of the main purposes for this project is this is a neighborhood that has a lot of vehicular pedestrian accidents. These series of sculptures, there'll be 6 different sculptures, all these little library-scaled pieces, pole-mounted, that will lead through an alleyway that leads directly to Monroe Elementary School to highlight a safe walking path for students. And there's other artists working in the community too, but this is, you know, another avenue that I want to encourage you all to take as well when you're applying to these RFQs. Look into this grant funding too. See what local organizations you can partner with for these projects, because, you know, then you can get your foot in the door a little sooner. Once I can take images of these finally installed, it'll help as I'm applying to future RFQs as well.
And it's in this RFQ, it's not a requirement to have already produced a public artwork. I'm not in favor of that restriction. I've tried to strike it down in each of the programs that we've designed. It's sometimes hard to get the people that are the fiduciary and the purchasing department and, you know, all these people that dig their little hole in their bureaucratic place, and they can't see past that, right? Because they're not going to hire a concrete contractor that's never poured concrete before, so how could they possibly think that an artist could do something when they've never done it before? A little bit different group there. So, but they find themselves in that. We get, sometimes there's no box for us to fit in, right? It's the same way when sometimes when we try to get insurance. Artists getting insurance is sometimes problematic because there's no box that says artist for the actuary that goes through to look at your risk level, right? So sometimes we're hard to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about applying for RFQs. There are some aggregators, some places where you find a lot of these. It's probably important, we'll have Becky talk just for a second about the process of doing this, and it seems, one, stupid and hard and a waste of time, but talk a little bit about how you've set it up, not just for us, but as an artist yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So part of my job with Public Art Services is I look at all of these websites on a weekly basis for opportunities, and a lot of them you can sign up for their newsletters and let them know what opportunities you're interested in, and this includes RFQs as well as granting opportunities, so you can get those directly to your inbox as they go live. But I do recommend setting up some sort of structure with your studio practice to check on these regularly, whatever works well for you. I have a good friend who's a composer in Denver, and he is wonderful at applying to residencies and gets so many residencies and grants, but it's because he sits down once a week and applies to 10 things. And sometimes they might just feel like long shots, but the more you get in the practice of doing these things, the easier it becomes. And then you start to have, you know, all of your image examples and videos lined up and already uploaded to these platforms, which helps simplify things when you go to apply to these opportunities. And once you write a few statement of interests or have to answer a question about, you know, have you worked with communities before, you start to get this kind of stock text that you can reuse as you're applying to future opportunities too. So always saving those things, you know, to your computer as well, and not just typing them into the form field so you can revisit it later, because it will make your work so much easier in the future as you move forward.
And this last one is what Becky was talking about before, not just the RFQs, but also these granting opportunities. And this cut and paste thing is important. It's almost going to, you're not going to change your artist statement every day. You know, maybe you will. But I think, one, you don't want to write it anyways. So you're probably just going to write it once, right? So you're going to use the same one over and over again. So you tailor it a little bit different. You know, you take the same text and you change a few words, right? And we'll talk a little bit about reading carefully in these RFQs too. So read the RFQ carefully. So when you find one that seems, I'll do this one. And I always say apply for everything. That's kind of how stupid I am. Read it carefully because they're going to send clues to you. So you find out whether this opportunity makes sense for you. Does your artwork start to address some of the things that they're talking about, or are the things they're talking about even interesting to you whatsoever? And then when you write your letter of interest, you know, how you're going to, all you're going to change in your letter of interest that you used for the last three is you're going to have read through, and they're going to say, we want X, Y, and Z. So you're going to change and just tell them how you're going to give them X, Y, and Z. And I used to tell my artists, read what they ask, and tell them 3 different ways how you're going to give it to them, right? And it goes to this base concept, and this is a business concept, and why did I go to art school for 7 years? Your job is to get your name on the contract, right? After you're engaged and you want to try to shift them in a different direction or move in a direction that you think is important, you have that opportunity. If you don't have your name on the contract, you don't have a conversation, right? So the trick is go through, be amenable. I always say in these interviews, say yes to anything they say. They go, well, could you make it orange? Absolutely. And then when you get your contract, you go, but yellow is better. And they can go, oh, I guess maybe yellow is better, right? So I mean, there's a game to this at a certain point, but it's 2 people having a conversation. This is a collaborative work for hire, right? So you're going to have a client. And then remember that it's a collaborative process, which we just talked about. And then what I just talked about, there's going to be times to negotiate once you got your name there, right? So here's a put down. Artists are not always their best editors, right? We sometimes don't do a very good job of sorting through our own work and getting rid of things that we know still need work, right? Maybe it's not bad. Maybe it just isn't complete. Maybe it's not fully fleshed out. Maybe it's not the final version of it. So when you say, I got 10 slides, that's how old I am, slides, 10 digital examples of your work, you better make sure that you thought about those. And when you think about selecting, curating, editing your work, read that RFQ again, right? Know who your audience is. It doesn't take much. It's Milwaukee, right? It's Denver, Colorado. It's a neighborhood that's been there forever. You know, you read 3 or 4 things, and suddenly you start to get a taste for who that audience is, and that's going to change maybe the work. It may be work from 2 bodies of work ago that you did, not necessarily what you're doing in your studio today. Maybe it's work you did in college. But if you have it, use it, if it's the right work. So same thing, these words, right? When you write these things out, think about what you're saying and reference back to the RFQ. Use their language to convince them that you're going to give them exactly what they want, right? Once again, get your name on the contract and you can start to move them to your side. It's a process, right? And then, I'm sorry, professionalism, right? These are usually government contracts, and we'll talk about that or mention it. There is no extra days. There is no missing information. There's no, I just didn't want to include that required document. Read through and make sure that everything is packaged in a very professional way. Use good language. Have your sister edit your language. That's what I did, and I have 3 sisters. So my language was always pretty good, right? So read it carefully. Video submissions are sometimes allowed. Make sure that it's in the right file format, that it doesn't exceed the amount of time. These are simple things to do. Make a little checklist. If they haven't given you a checklist, they often do. Make a checklist, right? So the concept images, renderings, and composite images, this is sometimes allowed. So sometimes the 10 images, right? Often they'll let you do one project, one image with 3 different depictions of it, right? Sculpture is a problem, right? I mean, we had somebody the other day saying, well, wasn't the other day, a couple of years ago, said, why are you orienting that with the back of the sculpture to the front of the building? And I said, what do you mean the back of the sculpture? There's no back of the sculpture, right? Is there a back of the David? I mean, do you not want to look at the back of the David? There's some people that really want to look at the back of the David, right? There's some people that want to look at the front of the David. Everybody decides which part of the David they want to look at first or last, right? So there's no front or back. So when you're looking at sculpture, you want to show both sides of the David, right? So it's the same project. So often you're allowed to make one image that might have 3 depictions of the same sculpture in that. You want to check to make sure. If they exclude it, don't do it. If they don't exclude it, do it. If it's a problem, they'll contact you and say, can you resubmit slide number 6 as a single image? But it's an important way to show more about your work than a single still image, right?
And it's also a good opportunity as well when we're thinking about works in public space, especially exterior works, to be able to show a sculpture in the daytime as well as in the evening. So, you know, the Dalmatian balancing the taxi cab on its nose, the lights on the taxi cab light up at night. When it rains, the windshield wipers work. Those are amazing things to be able to express in those images. So if you can show a few different views, if the opportunity allows it, you're not taking up multiple slides on one project.
Yeah. So you take advantage of stuff like that. Curating your work, right? What's the order? Pay attention to what's your lead image and what's your last image. And this has to do with the last one, the last section here too. You want to make sure you're curating somebody's look through it. Sometimes you'll show 3 or 4 at a time. Sometimes they'll look at them 1 at a time. You want to lead them through. You want to tell them a story with your artwork. So pay attention to stuff. Just don't dump all your stuff in there. Go, what do I want to show them first, and what do I want to finish on? What's my middle ground, right? How do I want to reinforce the first one with this work and then wow them with the last one? Those are things that are worth thinking about. And you would do it if you had a gallery show. You'd think about the very first thing when you walk in the door, what's my aha image, right? And you know which one you're going to put near the bathroom. I mean, you make these decisions. This is a curatorial life, right? And then make sure that you do this. Don't wait to the last minute, which we all do. Everybody does it. Don't do it, because you could have your own Wi-Fi problems. People are doing it at 10 o'clock at night when it's a 10:30 deadline, and suddenly your computer doesn't work, or their computer doesn't work. So give yourself a couple days of cushion. So if you have to redo it, or if it didn't work the first time, or something crashes, you've got an opportunity to make that up and still get your stuff in. And then all of this has to do with the fact that I call this a blood sport, right? When people look through this, you might get 300 applications times 10 slides. So you're going to be numb at a certain point. And people go through this and they just go, no, no, well, maybe, no, 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 yes, no. That's just how they're looking at art, right? These decisions are made really quick. So these 10 slides, this opportunity is the first and only impression your work is going to make on these people, unless you get shortlisted. And then you have a second opportunity to impress upon them your skills. So these are important things. It's fast. It's your one shot. It's all about the pictures. And that seems weird, but that's the only way you can communicate to them in this. It's these pictures. Pictures. It's the pictures, idiot. So importance of deadlines. This is a work for hire, right? This isn't just, they're not just coming shopping to buy your pretty stuff. They want to talk to you. They want to listen to you. They want to hear your story. They want to work with you. You will be signing a government contract. In this instance, it will be a quasi-governmental contract, because this organization is quasi-governmental. So it will probably be 17 pages, not 35 pages. Most government contracts for art are 35 pages long. That's the average. And they're mostly filled with things that you will never deal with, like you can't sell tobacco while you're doing your work. Or, I mean, there's stupid things that are ancient. But remember, and then often we come back to this, these are collaborations. So if you're shortlisted, understand the site and its intentions, right? Ask all the questions. Go to the meetings. If there's a site visit, go to it. Be prepared to say, why are you doing this? Who comes here? What's going to happen here? What do you do here? You know, I mean, who paid for this? Ask the stupid questions that will have great information for you. And then request information that you need. If you're going to do digital renderings, get the CAD files. If they're not offering them, ask for them. If you want to look at the structural, just because you're a nerd, ask for the structural. They'll give you those. And that will help inform what you can hang there, how big it can be. Can it hang from the ceiling? Should it hang from the ceiling, right? And then try to understand budgeting. One of the things that our company works with artists on most is budgeting, trying to understand how this works, right? And how to not go broke in public art. One of the tricks with budgeting, and we can talk more about this if people want to talk afterwards, pay yourself first. Say your budget's $100,000. It's just an easy number, right? Normally, people are going to pay 15 to 20% for a design fee, which comes from the architectural field. It's actually a fat design fee for an architectural field. But that's kind of what the expectation is. It doesn't mean that that's the only money you might make out of that 100,000, especially if you self-fabricate or if you're a painter or you're doing murals, then obviously you're going to take more of that. But if you have to pay someone to fabricate, but take your money out first when you do your budget. Pay yourself first. Understand that there's probably going to be an engineering drawing if it's not just a mural or a painting on the wall. Understand that you're going to have some costs to frame and ship it, to install it. You're going to have to buy insurance because they will want you to carry liability insurance. So there's another $1,500, out of the project. If it's a multi-year, maybe it's $3,000. But you have to understand that there's going to be these dollars. You take all those off first, and then that's your actual budget. That's what you get to spend to make art, right? Pay yourself first, take all the soft costs out, make sure you understand what it's going to take. You got to rent a truck to get the big painting there. There's $150 for the day. Write it down, take it off. Don't take it out of your 20% later. The game is to not touch your 20% unless you're buying booze or food or whatever you people spend money on. So that's an important thing. And budgeting is an art form in itself. But don't forget to pay yourself first, right? We have a number of people that do digital renderings for us. If you know somebody that does a good job and you're not good on a computer and you have an idea and you want to take that image and it's more than just a Photoshop thing, find someone that does that. You're going to have an honorarium. If you're selected, shortlisted, you're going to have $1,500, a couple grand to pay for this presentation. Spend it all. We always spend more. But the trick is to spend every dime to make sure that your presentation, when you show up with your little dog and pony show or the visuals up on the wall, whether it's the model, cardboard model still costs money, right? Or the digital renderings cost money unless you do them yourself. Spend those dollars, hire those people, find those partners, those collaborators, and help put your ideas in the best light, right? Utilize digital rendering services. And then create this engaging proposal, right? Not everybody speaks in public. I hate it, but it's important to what I do, right? I have some things that I need to communicate, so I'm forced to do this, right? So you learn how to do it. You learn how to stand up and defend your work and show your work and talk about why you think it's the best damn thing that they've ever seen and it's right for this steel, right? You're there to go, well, we have a good friend who's successful, Steve Batero. Wonderful painter. I've done a few public art projects for him. And here's Steve. Well, you're not going to like any of this, but I'm going to go ahead and start. I mean, that's seriously how he will walk in. Or go, oh, yeah, well, I'm sure you've looked at a lot of this stuff already today, so if you're too tired, I apologize. And then he'll start showing his work. It's like, Steve, just kill yourself in the alley before you get in there. I mean, it's like, and then he shows this amazing work, but already the two people that are going to kill his nomination have already gone, you're right, we're exhausted, we're not going to look at this, we're not going to like what he has to say. So professional presentations are important. So, if you go through, and let me clarify one thing. We will never work on a project that requires you to do a request for proposal. A request for proposal is a slap in the face. It says, do a bunch of work for free, and I'll choose somebody else. That's what a request for proposal is. So if you see one, run from them. And you might even send them a little note that says, it sounds like a great project. Why would I apply to work for free when I have there's no compensation? They're going to just say, you do all this stuff, and 300 other people we're going to ask, and then we're going to choose one person, right? So a request for qualifications, all they're asking you to do is read it, respond to it, show your previous work, show that you're good, join in the conversation and create something with us. That's what a request for qualifications is. So if you are selected after you've gone through this, there's going to be this approval process, and sometimes those take forever. The group can select you, right? And then it can be months before It goes to the Public Art Committee and the Public Art Subcommittee and City Council, and then somebody has to, and then the mayor has to sign it. You know, and suddenly 4 months later, before they even tell you, you've been selected, right? Some of those can be excruciating. This project won't be that way because we have a more tidy thing. I mean, it may be a month, we don't know, but it's not going to be what can turn out to be interminable. Once that approval process goes through, contracting, also exhausting, right? They'll mostly have a form contract that they use over and over again. It's 37 pages long and it's filled with no tobacco sales, and when they can sue you and how they can sue you and why they would sue you and what you can't do because they're going to sue you. There's a lot of that stuff in there. But that contracting process is, you read it. I always advise people to find an attorney that they trust and look at it. Ultimately, if you're willing to do the work and you feel like you can do it, a lot of that stuff is baloney. You don't have to worry about it, but you have to look out carefully for the copyright language. Make sure that you understand the copyright language. Primarily in good programs, they're not all good programs, they will only ask you to surrender what's called 113D of 106A of the US copyright, which is called droit moral, the moral rights, the rights to the thing itself. And if I'm buying it as a city, it's my ability to own it. And if I have to destroy it because we're going to rip the building down, I have the right to do that. But I can't change it without giving you an opportunity to take your name off it. I can't mutilate it, right? I can't willingly destroy it unless we're deaccessioning it. If I'm going to do any of those, I have to give you the right to come and recover it at your own cost. If you want to come and take your art away because I'm going to rip the building down, I have to give you ample amount of time, 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is, to come and recover at your own cost and take your baby home, right? So those are things. But ultimately, authorship, sometimes they'll take authorship of the work, and they don't know they're doing it because these city attorneys are not necessarily that well-heeled in copyright law. So that's really the thing that you really want to look at. Find a copyright attorney. We know a bunch. We can head you towards one. They're usually stupidly expensive, but it's important. So if you get a $100,000 contract, it's worth the $1,000 to get somebody to make sure that they've read through this document with you to at least at a minimum tell you what it means or what your responsibilities are in that. So contracting, there's obviously going to be a requirement for insurance because if you do a job for somebody and you get hurt doing it, they can sue you, right? If I'm at the city of Milwaukee and I hire you and you don't have liability insurance and you're driving to give me a presentation and you get hurt on the way, you can sue me. That's how bad the world is. So they say, okay, if you want this contract, send me a document that proves that you have liability insurance $1 million and $2 million, right? Then you can drive over here and show me your pretty pictures. That's a requirement. Engineering, like I said, it depends on what you do. There may be a requirement for engineering. It's almost always structural, but sometimes it's electrical, sometimes it's mechanical. Depends on the nature of your work, how dynamic it is. And then fabrication partners, right? If you don't create your own work, if you hire it out, make sure that you hire people, one that you trust, that you know. If you don't know them, find somebody that does. I'm sure there's somebody in this room that knows good fabricators, good metal workers, people that do concrete, all these things. You need to understand that you're going to be entering into a collaboration with these people to help realize something. If you do stuff this big and you've proposed it 30 feet tall, you damn well better have a friend, a fabricator, or a partner that's going to help you do that because you can't figure all that out in the amount of time you're going to be given in the budget to make all the mistakes that are going to be necessary to be successful at 30 feet tall. So you need those partners, right? Those are going to be fabricators. There's tons of fabricators out there. You don't always need to hire an arts fabricator, and we try to not hire them whenever possible because and there are other categories that do this. So welder, here's how much you pay a welder. Here's how much you pay an arts fabricator welder. Same job, same amount of lengths of the 1/4 inch full pen weld, but one's an arts fabricator. So if you can find good, competent tradespeople, they will often love to do something new for you, right? Because they're tired of running welds for beams and sizing stuff. So you show up and something interesting, and they've been doing this their whole life, they go, I'd love to do that. Well, what do you charge? Oh, I charge X amount of an inch for that weld. Okay, perfect. That's the person that I want to have do that, right? So, and that's normally who we try to use, is we try to find these people that do things on a good quality tradesman level, and sometimes we have to tool them up. Sometimes we have to hit them in the head and go, can you regrind that and give me a better bead there? You know, and then they'll go, I'll show you a good bead, and then they give you a really good bead because you asked for it. So that's helping a fabricator that may not be an arts fabricator, and you can get an arts fabricator that lays down a really bad looking bead. That's just the way it is, right? So those partners. And then installation, remember that you will almost always be required to install this work or be part of the installation of this work, whether you're coordinating it, certainly paying for it, or maybe doing it yourself. If you're doing it for yourself, look at those insurance requirements and make sure everyone you're bringing, you can't just bring the neighborhood kids into private property or a public place and have them do work. Those individuals need to carry the same insurance. So that's maybe where that fabricator comes in. Or you can hire an arts installation team to do that. In this instance, our company will be helping some artists with their installations. It sort of depends on the project, because we do big installations all over. I think we've mentioned this before, collaborative process. I'm going to run through this project really quickly. This is from an artist proposal, a rendering. This is for a project at the Phoenix airport. This is the great artist Donald Lipsky, who I've worked with for 23 years. And this is exactly what it looks like. It's a giant painting of clouds with a massive pair of sunglasses. So starts with this. So this is what the artist does for me, and then I take it from there. And I work with engineers. We create all the fabrication drawings, work with them through all of the fabrication. This is Krieg, who did the bear on the wire. Same artist. Hire him to come out and do what we believe is the largest stretched canvas framed painting in the world, which is 12 feet tall and 90 feet long. But it is a stretched canvas with a frame. This is just for scale. That's me standing in front of these glasses. These are functioning glasses. All the hinges work. Everything about this is true. The only thing is that these lenses, which are mirrored, are translucent, or not even, they're opaque with a mirror coating. So that's installed. So we went from that rendering to this project. So that's the process. What they're going to ask is, how durable is this? Make sure it makes sense, because you're going to have a warranty. In our case, it's going to be a 1-year warranty, but you do not want your piece to fall apart on the 370th day, right? A lot of people are very young in this audience, so a project that falls apart immediately is going to go with you for the rest of your life, right? So make sure that you make it out of durable materials and you do a good job of doing it, because it's got your name on it. It's going to be an Instagram moment. You're going to be tagged to this piece. Make sure it's going to look good 10 years later. Select materials that are appropriate for the site, whether that's indoor or outdoors. Plan for potential issues and how to address them. And this is thinking through these fabrication ideas, right? And then create a maintenance manual. You're going to be required to anyways. And that's basically just telling the owner how to own your piece, right? What's it made out of? How to replace those light bulbs, or if they have to recoat something, or if you put a graffiti coat on it, what is it? What's the brand? You're going to list your materials so that when you no longer want to deal with it because your warranty's up, I can fix it. Or we can hire you to come fix it, or you to come fix it, because you left the breadcrumbs as to how you built this thing, right? So I'm going to turn this over to Becky really quick, and she's going to just quickly talk about the RFQ. It's online. You can read it, and hopefully what we've talked about now will inform how you reread it, or start your application process, or amend your application process.
The next one? Thank you.
Next.
Perfect. So if you guys have already looked at the RFQ, when you look at it after this presentation, you may notice a new opportunity listed under the 3D opportunities. So we now have 2 potential 3D opportunities, one within the building, which will be a suspended installation, and then one which would be a 3D exterior sculpture that would be sited outside of the south building. And we're showing the budget range. Once we get to the shortlisted artists, we'll have a more definitive budget to give you at that time as you're preparing your proposals. And then the other opportunities are going to be two-dimensional and low-relief artworks that will be wall-mounted inside the building, and there's a lot of those opportunity locations throughout the new North Building expansion, and we'll have a range of budgets for those, which again, when it comes time to work on your proposal, you will have a more definitive budget to work with.
And just a note on that, the real estate in a convention center is very valuable as they try to move things in. They change those things over on a weekly basis. So people will say, well, why don't you have more sculptural opportunities? It's because floor space is, very valuable. But we do want to encourage people who are sculptural artists who can create works that spring off a wall to take that seriously as a sculptural opportunity, not just a 2D. And low relief here means if it's big and it's going to come down to the floor, it's going to be low relief. If it's something higher on a wall, it can be, deeper relief. But ultimately, above 8 feet, things can start coming off the wall a little bit more. Below 8 feet, they're going to be pretty low relief or two-dimensional things. And then often we have walls that just need to be two-dimensional because of how the space is programmed. They put a bar over there, they put pipe and drape up, they're going to put a sign there sometimes,
So I'm not going to read this word for word because we do have it in the RFQ, but just to give you an idea of the goals for the public art in this building, and a lot of the things that John has already touched on through the talk too, this is a space that is really active. This is a space that's constantly changing. You might have a painting installed on the wall that they have to put a banner in front of every time that they host a convention there. So the space is really fluid and always adapting to whatever event that they're hosting at the time. And also keeping in mind that this might be visitors' first impressions to the city of Milwaukee too. So this is really, our client's intent is to be able to showcase what makes Milwaukee such an amazing place. And as John touched on before, these people may not really venture outside of like a 3-block radius of the convention center and the hotel that they're staying in. So this is a really great opportunity for them to learn more about Milwaukee through the artwork that's installed in the building. And realizing too that this is a space where you're going to have visitors of all ages and all backgrounds coming through as well. So, really as you're working on these concepts, keeping all those things in mind. And this is also great information to reflect on in your statement of interest too, to show that you read the brief, you understand what they're looking for. So being able to, to speak to those things as well.
Yeah, so steal from this for your letter, but understand that you're just trying to show people your pretty pictures at this point. When you get shortlisted, this is going to be very important. In the first application process, it's just information to you, and like Becky said, a little bit of touching on it.
This is another thing that you'll read through in the RFQ, and this was an exercise that we did with different community members, which is the 3-word or phrase exercise, just asking them to, sum up, what is the feel of Milwaukee? What makes Milwaukee special? How would you describe it to someone who's never been here? And these were some of the responses that we got. So again, not necessarily things that you need to worry about right at this moment, but if you are shortlisted, this can be helpful information, or even, give you an idea of how to reach out to people in your own community to get some feedback as you're working on your proposal as well. Timeline, this is very important. We're already at, the RFQ's been released. You are here at Public Art 101, congratulations. The RFQ response deadline is September 16th. That deadline, unless it is posted and changed on the request for qualifications on callforentry.org, that is the definitive deadline at this point. So no late submissions will be accepted. I always, by a rule of thumb, teach myself that the deadline's 2 days before the actual deadline, so that I'm not, at midnight the night before trying to upload photos and my computer crashes. Then in early October will be when shortlisted artists and artist teams are notified based on the review of the RFQs, and then we'll move on to proposals and presentations in early December, and have the selected artists notified before the end of the year. Contracts executed in January of 2023, and then the hope is for all of the artwork to be installed by the first quarter of 2024. So that's the overview of the project timeline. And then for the required materials to be submitted, I feel like this RFQ is pretty straightforward. So you have your 10 image examples. I believe there's even the opportunity to upload a video example as well if your work's best portrayed in that format. And also having an updated resume in PDF format that you can upload your submission. And the statement of interest, which is a 2,000 character limit, which in my experience is plenty to, express the intent of your artwork and your interest in the project. We do have, the 3-dimensional opportunity locations as well as the 2-dimensional opportunity locations. So make sure in that statement of interest that you let us know, what is the area of interest most to you. There is a drop-down menu where you can select if you want to apply for 3D, 2D, or both opportunities. But also feel free to outline, hey, if I selected 3D, but I'm really just interested in doing the suspended sculpture, can outline that in the statement of interest. And then where you can submit and read the full RFQ is at callforentry.org. And if you just search Wisconsin Center District, it'll come up. And you can create your account free online there.
Does anybody else need that any longer? So callforentry.org. So just a couple of other additional encouragements. One of the things that we're here to do is try to make this as easy as possible. There are certain requirements that we have to go through. There's going to be some contract requirements. If you have questions, send Becky an email. If you have trouble with call for entry, we have 2 people on our staff that can help with that, but Call for Entry can also answer those questions. They do have a way to reach out to them, and they will respond when you do it in enough time. So don't wait till the last day to suddenly send in 15 requests for Call for Entry to answer. Do it the week before so that someone on the team, whether you can't get them to respond, or one of us will respond to help and answer those questions. It's relatively straightforward. This seems like a lot of information, but a lot of it hopefully is about why we do this, not about how to do it, but the reasons that we want to do it, and why it's important. We're going to try to make each of these steps painless for people, or as painless as possible. We have no idea how many artists will be hired. We have no idea how many artworks we're going to commission, because we don't know who's going to come out to play, right? If all of the artists that submit make art that's smaller than Becky's, we're going to need a lot of artists, right? But if we do get some artists to do some monumental things, that'll change. And so the budgets and how many artworks we actually commission, that'll be established as we go through this process. It's going to be relatively fluid. We wish we had 5 times the budget. We actually wish we knew what our budget is today. We'll know it here in the next few weeks or so while we do this process. So we have a finite budget. We have way more spaces that they want us to fill than we could possibly fill with the budget that's allotted. There's going to be a lot of disappointed walls in this new space, right? Luckily, the old building is being refreshed, new paint, new carpet, bring out some of the 1980s TJ Maxx decorations. So we're going to probably put a couple pieces in the older building. Most of this work will go into the new building, though, which I believe is as handsome as you can get for a building that has a lot of jobs to do, right? They ask a lot of these places. So please consider throwing your hat in here, and please tell the communities that you're involved in to do it as well. I mean, more is better in my opinion, and no one will ever take your opportunity from you. you're the only one that can take your opportunity from you by not applying. But the person sitting next to you tonight is not going to steal your work, right? It's not going to steal your opportunity. You have to come and play, right? The only one that can take it away from you is you. So once again, thank you so much to MARN and the support here that they've given us. Hopefully you guys are members. Hopefully you guys enjoy the coffee and the wine and the snacks here too. It's a great place. We're so pleased to have been part of it. And thank you very, very much for coming from our staff. So thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, and raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone over to you. Do you have a question?
First of all, is there a fee involved with the proposal?
Nope.
Okay, and I have never done any public artwork before. It sounds like you guys work with the artists to, after the proposal phase, to try to figure out what I'm trying to say, to realize the work. How, like in the past, you've been involved with that. How involved will you be with this project?
Depends on the artist. You know, we will rely on artists to bring their own skill set. And if an artist if we believe an artist doesn't have the basic competencies to do what they claim they're going to do, because we'll ask you in the interview, we'll go, well, hey, how are you going to do that? But with a different tone, probably. But we'll say the same thing. Hey, buddy, what are you doing? So we'll try to figure that out. We probably will not help people from the ground up on every level, but we have a lot of skills and expertise that you can lean upon if you have questions, and if those questions are leading us to believe that the project isn't going to work, we can either help you scale it back a little bit or figure out how to redirect you towards something. If we really want your brain, we'll try to figure out how to make it work, right? If we can't do it, then that's a conversation between the selected artist and the team to go, it's probably not going to work, right? So come with a project you believe you think can be built, that you've thought through what it's going to take, or you know that fabrication partner. Don't just come and go, I don't know anything about it, but it's going to look like this, but that's all I know. That's not the professional way. That's Steve Batero walking in and going, you're not going to like what I'm about to show you here, right? You're saying the same thing. What other?
Oh, and actually, real quick, I'll bring the microphone over to you while I answer this. Someone in the virtual group has asked a question, which is, what is my contact information to answer RFQ questions? It's Becky at publicartservices.com. It is also listed on the RFQ.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Henry, and I'm the owner of Asia Fine Arts Gallery downtown, and a longtime supporter of MARN, past board member. And I have a couple of questions about collaboration. Recently, I was reading an article where an artist had hired this collaborator that he had worked with, this fabricator that he had worked with for many years. But as time went on, the collaborator wanted more credit for the project, which the artist did not want to give him. But the fabricator thought that his art was very unique and he should have more of a presence and more credit. So how do you avoid that? And then one more question, can you put attorney and consultation fees within a budget?
Yes, so we've run into the first question before with a couple fabricators that are excellent but have a very high opinion of who they are, and this has to do with hiring arts fabricators, right? And there's a company in Denver, very, 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 very good fabricator, but they're also artists, and they do a lot of work with artists to develop different ways to make things. Twice they have tried to go back and claim authorship, and that's all you own, right? At the end of the day, as an artist, you own your copyright. It's great, but authorship, that's you, right? That's your name. That's what you protect is your authorship. So there's very simple work for hire documents out there. And if you're a selected artist, we will give you one of those work for hire documents, and it's an agreement between you and your fabricator, and the fabricator signs it and it says, I understand this is work for hire. I understand I have no claim to anything that has to do with this design or the way it's made. I'm here just to be paid to do this job. And I'm going to charge you more because I'm part of the team that helps you figure it out. I'm going to charge you more for it. But at the end of the day, guess what? All I do is get paid for my work. I don't own it. I can't reproduce it. I can't do it for anybody else. I can't make 5 of them and sell them on the street. So it restricts that relationship to a work for hire relationship. And that's so excellent question. And the second one had to do with puppies. What was the? Oh yes, can you put insurance and engineering as line items? Absolutely, they will. And attorney's fees. They'll want a good client will go, that woman understands the real cost of the project. So when you line item and you go, my attorney's fee is $1,500, my insurance, my engineer, they'll go, oh, she's getting it. We can work with her. She understands the cost of this, because those are real costs. So put it down, take it out before that's part of those dollars that have to disappear before you get to say brick and mortar comes now, or I can buy paint or whatever it is I'm doing. So absolutely. Yep. What other questions? Anything else?
With the 10 requested images, are composites allowed for this?
And always with us.
You know, I'm someone who works quite often quite large and sculptural, so I get worried if I have a full shot and then a detail and then another detail that it would get lost.
Sucks all your stuff out.
I know.
Yeah. So yes, we're
Okay.
totally in favor of that.
Okay.
We want to see that. That's why we brought it up. It's like if they let you do it, because
Okay.
it's a good way. And maybe not all your slides are that way, but a couple that are important, you want to show both sides.
And the work will get seen large enough that,
Yeah.
okay.
Either they'll usually do it on a computer for the first round, and then we'll project for the second round. So say we get 300 people to apply. The selection panel will go and kind of get the chaff from the wheat, we like to say. Winnow the big chunk, get down to 20 or 40 of those, and then together they'll look at the last 40 or 50, whatever that number that is. Depends on the scoring. And then that's usually pretty big. But what's nice on a computer, if they want to get a better look, they can zoom in. So good quality images, high resolution, as high as Cafe will allow you. Cafe tells you what size. Do it. Do the max. So if people want to go and look in, they can see the detail.
So there was that artist that did the painting, and then she did the tile. So and that was printed on there. I sometimes work in fiber, needle felted, and I have really excellent. I have printed it, and with a really high resolution photographer. I'm just wondering if something like that could. Do you do wraps, or would it translate on tile? I've never printed it on tile. I'm just kind of wondering about stuff like that.
That's a really great question, and I actually really like the idea of being able to capture something that's, fiber-based, that has a lot of visual texture to it, and translating it to, a really smooth tile piece. Yeah, I mean the tile company that we worked with on that project, they do a lot of reproductions of photography and painting. So I feel like if you can get a high quality image,
they'll do samples for you. $40 or $50, they'll do a sample, and you just take a little snip, and you say those were 16 by 16 inch tiles, so nice tiles. So they'll send you a couple, and they'll charge you a little bit for it, and it'll take 3 or 4 months. But then you've got it. You can go, this was a horrible idea, or you can go, I can see how this might work. And you may play with it a little bit. You may take, if you're a fiber person, you make 3 different types of textures that you create. Have them do a 16 by 16 of each of those textures and decide whether one of them works better than the other. So the same way, you're going to spend some money to do a project, you might spend a little money to see how your project translates if you're interested in maybe that process. And it is not a perfect process. Some things work better than others in it, but it might be worth checking out because it is a way to take that medium into a different space, right? And I would think for a fiber artist, I would only do that if I felt like it needed to be outside. Because fiber work is pretty well accepted in the public art field on the inside. If it's good and if it's bad, we usually get rid of it.
And that's
Same with
also
everything.
something too where you can take that sample tile into your proposal presentation to have a physical representation of what the work would look like as
Super
well
valuable.
too. Yeah.
And then we have one back here, this person in the second row, second to the back row.
I kind of have a couple questions, I guess. For doing something like painting, is there anything in the RFQ that has anything about the sizes or the spaces to know how large to quote? Or we just take a stab at what we think we want to do?
Yeah, so right now we have a ton of spaces, giant walls. The building is enormous. So we may have artists work large if they're comfortable working large. We may also have an artist do a series of paintings. There's a great example in Denver. If I was good with this thing, I would pull it up. Years ago, when I was doing the convention center there, I knew of a painter that I thought was perfect for the convention center. And I said to her, you should apply. Here's this giant wall that I think your work, it's a big curved wall. She goes, the biggest paintings I do are on doors, because she would just paint on hollow core doors, right? And I said, can you do 20 of them for me? Right? And she just went, I would love to do 20. And we did this massive salon of these door-shaped paintings in all different ways, and it's a phenomenal installation. So big means own the wall. It doesn't mean paint the whole wall, right? So do 20 of them. Do 40 of them. If you do stuff this big, and they're great, we'll say, can you do 20?
So is that part of the collaboration process then, is figuring that out? Because that's kind of, I had a related question with the tile, and you said that, you know, she did a painting, and then it sounded like it was kind of your guys' idea to do the tile thing.
Yeah. We came to her with that. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you came in and and you're a finalist or a semi-finalist, and you go, the biggest I'm comfortable doing is that size right there, but they're really great. We're going to say, do you want to do 10? Right? We got a spot. 10 would go. We got a long horizontal here. Let's just do ba 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 ba. Or we've got a big one. Do you want to do? You build us a grid. Figure out how you would own that wall. Right? We want your paintings. So that's the way we're going to try. That's our collaborative idea, is to go, well, we know the spaces. We think the artist is good there. We'll make the imitation. And you can go, no, I don't want to do 20 of those. And then we can say, well, thanks for coming, because Seth wants to do it, because he likes to do 20 paintings.
We had another question through the virtual attendees, which is, if you have to say now in your statement of interest what medium you plan on using, and you do not need to know what the final medium or concept is going to be until you are shortlisted and asked to work on the proposal, because you'll also get a lot more information from us at that end that will really help to inform your final proposal. So do not feel like you need to say, it's going to be a painting, it's going to have these elements in it. You do not need to give us any of that information at this time. You just need to tell us about your art and your process.
I was wondering, so for artists that are more emerging or don't have the resume in public arts, what are your recommendations for that application process when it comes to getting to that finalist stage and focusing in other areas if that's what you're lacking in?
Do everything I just told you. Like every single thing I just told you, do that. Because there's no bar. We have not set a bar here for anyone. There's no requirement to have done that. So do your best work. Take as good a quality images as possible. Think about how they lay out, all those things that we just talked about. That's all you can do. If you're a good artist, emerging or not, and you do these things, you're at least going to be on the table. You're going to be considered. And there's no bar, there's no one that will not be considered if they submit all the documents and follow the rules. It's all you have to do. There's like 10 things you have to do. It's not even that. It's like 6 things you have to do. And if you do those, you're in the game. And now it's battle royale to see who's the better artist for the location, right?
And as far as the resume goes too, I mean, you can just outline any exhibits that you've been in. If you have exhibited your work yet, you can also list if there's art classes that you've taken before or workshops that you've attended. Those are all good things to get your resume started too.
Yeah. And, you know, if you want to put references on, sounds hilarious, but in your resume, sometimes people put references on. I had no references for years. I had my mom as one of my references, my first reference, and I just said, my mom, and then her phone number. I said, she thinks I'm cute. And that was on there for 20 years. And twice people called my mom when I was using my resume. And it was the cutest thing, is somebody's calling my mom as a recommendation. And I think they thought it was cute or funny that I had put my mom on there. But she vouched for me. She did. She did. It was good. So be creative in your resume, or if you don't have a big one, say where you want to show your work. You know, wouldn't that be great if you were in a position like a teacher, and somebody showed up and they didn't have a resume, but they said, this is where I want to go, this is my aspiration. I would go, absolutely, let's talk to this person and find out where they got the audacity to say that, because to me that's pretty fantastic. Yeah. So be creative. You're an artist, right? We hope. Any other questions? I know it's a lot of information.
My question was, does the final piece that if you get accepted, does it have to be one of those 10 images that you submit?
You're not selling us work. You're just showing us how you think, and then we're going to have you do something special for us. These are commissions. These are not purchases. Now, we may, if you show us something and we fall in love with it, if one of the selection panels goes, God, I wish this was available, and you say at your interview, it's available, we may go, can we have it? Can we buy that from you? That might be a rare instance, but that's not what this is about. But it doesn't mean we wouldn't do it, and it doesn't mean in your proposal you can't say, I've already done this body of work that is perfect for you guys, and here's the 6 images that illustrate it, and we go, you're right, that's perfect for us. Can we just have that? We don't know that that's going to happen. So we assume that each one of these is going to be a conversation unless somebody has already basically been reading our minds and can bring something that is fantastic, and it has happened. So my client, Donald Lipsky, the way I met him, he was shortlisted as one of 4 really major artists for a big opportunity, and he was the only one that submitted a piece that was already made. He didn't get selected for that, right? We hired Jonathan Borofsky, a different artist, to do it, but somebody on the panel said, we can't let that piece go. And she happened to be very wealthy, and she said, how much is it? It's like $175,000. It's the horse with the chair on it. $175,000. She goes, I'm buying it. And she bought it and donated it to the city, right? He was okay with that. Very. But it was a fluke, right? I mean, we got 2 for 1 because somebody on the selection panel just went, we got it. We're not going to lose that opportunity. So.
And we have another question from the online chat as far as if for the 2-dimensional interior opportunities, if we would consider an LED light installation. I'm going to let you take that one.
No. What we're trying to do is make sure that whatever we select is easy to own and easy to maintain. And we know that LEDs are easy to own and easy to maintain right now. They're also affordable. What we have problems with is moving things, controllers, power supplies, right? So if you're going to bring a technology piece in, know your stuff, be able to talk about it, and tell this group exactly how easy it is to own, and hopefully have something to back it up with, right? And understand what's going to go. A DMX is going to go out well before the 15-year, 20-year run life on those LEDs is, right? And we also know that every LED product has about a 10% failure rate. It's getting better and better every year. Now it's probably 8% or whatever. But say you know that. Show that your budget shows that there's some replacement stuff for that first 6 months when LEDs actually fail. I mean, if LED is going to fail, it's going to fail in the first six months, right? If it makes it past 6 months, you're probably going to get a lot of years out of it. But your power supplies are going to go out. Your DMX controllers are going to be a pain. And if it's a very, very complex project, it will most likely, in this instance, be rejected because they don't have an on-site staff to every day go and either reset it or fix it or even want to fix it. And there's nothing more depressing than a thing that whirls if it won't whirl, right? Because it doesn't whirl.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you. In the 10 slides, and you provide details, and you provide details, et cetera. What if you have architectural photos of them in already a large-scale environment? Is that considered?
Even better.
Okay.
Even better.
All right.
In situ, when you can, not always, and like this other person asked about, you know, the composite images. If you show a couple in situ, we get scale, we get ideas, but then really focus on the art. But it is good if you have some and lie about it. You know, I've said to so many people, you know, that do things this big and they want to do them really big, take them into Photoshop. Put them in front of a building. Put them in a park in Photoshop. Show us how great that would be if it was 12 feet tall in that park. If I want a sculpture in a park and you do things this big, I'm pretty sure we can help you make it 12 feet tall. Or you can tell me how you're going to make it 12 feet tall, and now I know how good it will look in that park. I wouldn't do it in the park I'm trying to get you to do, but put it in a different park and do a good job. Find that person to do those things. Sometimes there'll be a prohibition about that, but it'll be clear. It's not one of ours. If you guys want to show us how great your piece will be, do it. We want to see that. We're not afraid. You know, we know what can be done because we're doing it every day with people that have never done this stuff before. We're doing really stupid, gigantic stuff that's never been done before. We know it can be done. So we're a different audience, and we can help our selection panel with our background to go, yeah, they can do it. They'll figure it out, or we can help them. So we just have 5 minutes left.
Okay, so then submit those that have been photographed in an actual environment.
If it's your best work and they look great.
Okay.
If it doesn't fit those two criteria, it doesn't matter where it's pictured.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right, well, if you do, Becky at publicartservices.com, and she's very good. So Becky works Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I would submit your question on either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and if I was smart, I'd submit it on a Tuesday.
Because the rest of the time I'm in my studio. But I'm always happy to answer questions, so please send me whatever questions that you have. I love getting emails and responding to them, and no, that was not sarcastic.
So thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. And good luck.